Hello everyone. Welcome back to Today News K-Wave channel. When Jungkook reminds us why Jimin is everything, it doesn't feel like a grand, contrived moment, nor a scene that can be twisted into a long, endless theory. Instead, it feels simple, warm, and very human. There's a feeling that just arises, a feeling that doesn't need to be explained with complex analysis, because the heart immediately understands. That's where the power lies. Not in what they say explicitly, but in how real and honest it all feels. Jungkook has always been known as someone who grows before us. From a shy, curious magne to a calm, confident adult. In that growth process, there's one common thread that's often felt, though not always overtly highlighted: Jimin's presence. Not as a domineering figure, not as the center of attention that overshadows others, but as a home, a safe place. Someone who allows Jungkook to be himself without having to explain too much. Jimin, in his own way, is always there, not to show his importance, but precisely because his presence makes others feel important. That's what often escapes the eye, but is captured by the heart. When Jungkook shines, we often forget that there's someone quietly keeping that flame burning. Not with forceful encouragement, but with warmth, small gestures of attention, and consistent empathy. That's why, when Jungkook reminds us about Jimin, it doesn't feel like a grand confession, but rather a truth we've long known. Only that day it feels more clear. Their relationship doesn't need to be wrapped up in a dramatic narrative. There's no need to search for hidden meanings in every glance or gesture. It's when we stop theorizing that we can see something far more beautiful. We see two people who understand each other's rhythms. We see a comfort that isn't crafted for the camera. We see a trust that doesn't need to be announced. It's all felt in the little things, in the way they stand side by side, in the silence that isn't awkward, in the laughter that isn't forced. Jimin is everything, not because he's always in the foreground, but because he's always there. There are times when Jungkook is tired, times when Jungkook is doubtful, and times when Jungkook needs to be reminded that he's not alone. Jungkook doesn't need to say much to make us understand that. The way he acts, the way he reacts, the way he feels comfortable around Jimin is enough. There's a sense of security that's hard to fake. There's a sincerity that can't be faked. What makes it all so touching is the fact that this kind of relationship is rarely presented in such a raw way. In a world full of expectations, demands, and scrutiny, finding a connection that remains tender is a rare thing. Jungkook and Jimin don't project perfection. They project humanity. They show that growing together isn't always about big words, but about consistency and caring. When we watch their moments, the tears often come not from sadness, but from emotion. Haru sees that even in the midst of incredible pressure, there's still room for genuine affection. Haru sees that someone can be everything to another simply by being themselves. Jimin doesn't need to shout to be heard, and Jungkook doesn't need to explain to be understood. That's why it all feels so profound. No theory can truly capture this feeling. It attempts to give structure to something that is inherently fluid. Feelings don't work like formulas. They're present, touching, and then settling. When Jungkook reminds us of Jimin, what we feel isn't a desire to analyze, but a desire to feel. To feel the warmth of that bond, to feel the calm they share, to feel the importance of having someone who always sees you for who you are. Jimin is everything because he's a reminder of the simple things we often forget. About listening without judgment. About being present unconditionally. About loving with attention, not claims. Jungkook, in his honest and open way, shows that these are the things that truly matter. Not the spotlight, not speculation, not exaggerated stories. In the end, all that's left is a feeling. A warm feeling in the chest. A calmness that slowly envelopes us. Gratitude for being able to witness such a genuine connection, even if only from a distance. Jungkook reminds us, without having to say much, that Jimin is everything, not because of any label, but because of his real, meaningful presence. No theories here, just feelings. And perhaps that's the most honest. Purple heart, loudly crying face. And that feeling doesn't stop at just one moment. It's like an echo that keeps repeating itself every time we remember how Jungkook looked at Jimin, how his tone changed when he said his name, how his body language softened without him realizing it. None of this can be trained or directed. It's an emotional reflex, something born of a closeness that has gone through many phases. From light laughter to long periods of exhaustion, to confusion, to the maturity that slowly grew together. Each phase leaves its mark, and it's that trace that makes their relationship feel so deep. We often forget that behind the spotlight, they are still human. They feel fatigue, longing, anxiety, and hope. In that space, Jimin exists as someone who doesn't try to be more than he needs to be. He doesn't fill the space with ego, but with empathy. He doesn't control, but accompanies. And Jungkook, who has been living in a world that demands perfection since he was young, finds comfort in that presence. A comfort that doesn't judge, doesn't pressure, just accepts. Jimin is everything because he gives Jungkook space to breathe, to not always be strong, to not always be right, to not always know the answer. There's incredible beauty in a relationship where one isn't required to be anything other than themselves. Jungkook, in many moments, seems lighter around Jimin, calmer, more whole, and that's no coincidence. It's the result of trust built slowly, day by day. When we stop looking for hidden meanings and start accepting what's visible, we discover a greater truth. That their bond doesn't need proof. It lives in small habits, in consistent attention, in the way they understand each other without the need for elaborate words. The world may want everything labeled, explained, and analyzed, but feelings don't work that way. They just want to be felt. There's a reason so many people are touched by this dynamic. Because in it, we see a reflection of something we all seek. A sense of security. A sense of understanding. A sense of belonging, even when the world feels too noisy. Jungkook and Jimin show that this kind of closeness is still possible, even amidst incredible pressure. And that gives hope not just to them, but to all of us watching. Every time Jungkook reminds us of Jimin, it's as if he's also reminding us of the value of genuine relationships, of the importance of being wholeheartedly present, of the power of tenderness. In a world that often glorifies emotional violence and dominance, Jimin stands as proof that warmth can be just as powerful, that small acts of attention can be the greatest support, that being everything to someone doesn't mean being the center of everything. And perhaps that's why this all feels so emotional, because we're not watching a story crafted for public consumption. We're witnessing a slice of real life as it happens to be right in front of us. It's not perfect, it's not always neat, but it's honest. Jungkook isn't trying to convey some grand message. He's simply being himself. And in that honesty, we see how important Jimin is to his life. No theory can replace the warm feeling that arises when we realize this. No speculation can be more powerful than the comfort of the obvious. We don't need to search for what isn't there. What is there is more than enough. Mutual trust, respect, and care speak volumes. In the end, it all comes down to one simple thing. Jungkook reminds us why Jimin is everything because he shows us that love, in any form, doesn't always have to be loud and dramatic. Sometimes it comes as a calm, as a consistent presence, as someone who makes the world feel a little lighter. There's no theory here, no demands to understand more than necessary, just honest feelings, flowing as they are, and lingering in our hearts longer than we expect. Purple heart, loudly crying face. And that's it for the video. Thank you for watching until the end and sharing all the emotions. If you also feel warm, touched, or suddenly smile to yourself because of Jungkook and Jimin, then we are in the same feeling. This is not about theory, not about speculation, but about what is truly felt in the heart. Don't forget to like the video if it resonated with you, subscribe for future content, and write in the comments section what your favorite moment was that made you realize why Jimin is everything. See you in the next video, keep your feelings, and keep feeling everything sincerely. Purple heart, loudly crying face.